Rick Carlisle mentions evaluating the Pacers starting five. Well, I'm going to do it too. The curious case of Andrew Nembhard's plus minuses this season. Plus, the Pacers have signed James Wiseman. Why'd they do this? It makes great sense to me. And some more Pacers trade notes you need to know. You'll get all of it today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Monday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and Circle City Spin, and today, a personal research project, trade notes. We're talking James Wiseman signing with the team, a loaded grouping of topics today. We'll get to trade notes that you need to know about the Pacers at the end, mostly, and in fact, entirely internal stuff. We'll talk about James Wiseman in the middle, who's back. I talked a little bit about his game against the Pelicans that Rick Carlisle called terrific on yesterday's show, but I want to talk about the mechanics of this signing. It's very interesting and why this makes great sense for the Pacers, despite them not needing Wiseman on the team earlier in the season. But I will start with the starting lineup, and specifically Andrew Nembhard, because Kyle Taylor pointed out a stat a while ago that just absolutely blew my mind, and it has kind of continued as a trend, and it's not something that I think is the answer to the Pacers starting lineup, but it's certainly something that I wanted to talk about. Some admin stuff for this week. It's Christmas week. Some of you might not be listening in the same way, like commuting, because you might be off. If you are working, salute to you. Probably no guests this week. I'm not going to make anybody take time away from their family around the holidays to talk to me about the Pacers. And also, I'll be hosting a lot of people this week. So this is the last week you YouTube watchers will see the normal background with all the nice stuff. I'll be in a much different part of my house the rest of the week. None of you care about that. Okay, let's go. The Pacers starting lineup, as Rick Carlisle said last game, quote, "I've got to look at what is happening with the starters. We can do better there. They're playing bad." Him saying that does not mean that they're going to make changes. He might just be looking at what's going on, why the numbers are what they are. So let me start by saying this and spoiling the topic a little bit early. I do not think Andrew Nembhard should have his role changed, should be benched, or that the answer to the question of what the Pacers can do better is just bad luck. What I am saying is Kyle Taylor pointed this out a while ago, and I think this is just an absolutely fascinating statistical thing from this season that someone asked me about as a topic that I thought was fascinating for the Pacers. Andrew Nembhard's single game plus minus, which is not a good stat some of the time, right? Like a lot of the time, it is not necessarily reflective of a player's play. You can tell if someone is playing well or poorly outside of their own individual plus minus. It is not a panacea. However, Andrew Nembhard has been over zero, a positive plus minus 3 of his 20 games this season. And when Kyle Taylor pointed this out on Twitter a while ago, he had not at all been above zero. So then I wanted to look at this. What's going on here, right? What is actually going on here? And my hypothesis was going in, I scientific methoded this a little too hard, there's going to be some fluky nonsense in here because I have watched Andrew Nembhard play this season, and I think he's playing largely okay, right? He hasn't been quite as point guard-y setup-y as everybody maybe hoped in an evaluation year, but has been pretty good at more things than I think he's been given credit for, and I'll talk about those things at the end. That was my hypothesis going in. So let's start with this. 4 Pacers players have started every single game they've played this year for the Pacers. Mathurin, Siakam, Nesmith, and Nembhard. Nesmith's on-off is plus 3.8 this season. Siakam's on-off is a ridiculous plus 12.9. He's been by far the Pacers' best player. Ben Mathurin's on-off is plus 1.09. I looked up Jay Huff's because he's been starting a lot recently. His on-off is plus 0.6. Andrew Nembhard's on-off is minus 15.9 points per 100 possessions. Huh? How? He's playing with those players that I just said, sans Nesmith, obviously, a lot. How is this even possible? That doesn't make any sense to me. And another stat I'll say later will blow your mind even more as we kind of dig into, like, how is this even possible, right? So the first thing to note is Nembhard missed the second half of that Thunder game where the Pacers played pretty well, and then an early stretch of the season where the Pacers, granted, lost more than they won, but played a lot of close games, played pretty well, beat Golden State, won another game in there, right? He missed a lot of close games. Then he returned. Immediately, the Pacers started sucking on the road trip, and it wasn't because of Andrew Nembhard. So that does hurt your numbers a little bit. But this is truly like, what is going on level of stuff, because it doesn't feel like he'd be contributing to this, especially to this level. So obviously my first step was, well, let me check this Siakam Nembhard numbers, because how on earth can Siakam be this big of an on-off difference and Nembhard be this negative when they play together a fair amount, a number that we will get to later. With both Nembhard and Siakam on the floor, 461 minutes. The Pacers net rating is minus 14.1. How? How? Their offense is bad, but not like horrible at 112.3 per 100 possessions. Their defense, unbelievably terrible, 126.4 per 100 possessions. Do you think Andrew Nembhard and Pascal Siakam are bad defenders? I think you're starting to figure out what my solution is going to be. But that is truly shocking to me. They're +6 net rating this season with Siakam on the floor without Nembhard. What? With a crazy good defensive rating of 110.3. Do you think Andrew Nembhard is making the Pacers defense worse? The opponent 3-point percentage for the Pacers in those Siakam no Nembhard minutes, 30%. That's shockingly lucky. That's not even something that I put in my notes. I just looked it up again. So that's crazy to me. Next stat to look at. Okay, this is weird. His stats with Siakam are way different than basically everybody else's. Nembhard, Siakam, Mathurin all together as a trio. The three guys who have played the most of their have played a lot, guys. -68 raw in 298 minutes. 110 offensive rating, that's not very good. 121 defensive rating, that's very bad. The Pacers cannot make twos in those alignments. So that was pretty weird. I thought maybe there is something to this. Maybe the answer is, okay, these duos are all fine, but as a trio, they're not very good. And that could be something the Pacers could look at with their starting five. And that could be some reason that Nembhard's numbers aren't very good. But then you look closer at that, and that doesn't really hold up, except it kind of does. So here is number spam that will make you go, what is even going on with the Pacers this year? Siakam and Mathurin together without Nembhard, +27 in 108 minutes. Pretty normal offensive percentages on twos and threes. They're a little warm from deep. Their opponents have been pretty normal, but a little below average on twos and threes. So that might get a little worse, but that duo has been positive. Nembhard and Mathurin together without Siakam, -48 in 80 minutes. Yikes. They've been horrible from three. The Pacers have with those two on the floor together without Siakam, and their opponents have been hot from three. So it's probably bad luck. That's 80 minutes is extremely low sample size. Siakam and Nembhard together without Mathurin, -65 in 162 minutes. However, comical numbers. The Pacers with Siakam and Nembhard together without Ben Mathurin on the floor, 28% from three, which is 7% below league average, and their opponents are shooting 67% on twos. That's 13% above league average. So it's not even necessarily that the trios don't fit, it's that the numbers are only regular when Nembhard is not on the floor. So is Andrew Nembhard just the unluckiest player ever? Maybe, probably not. There's probably something in the data that's underlying, and I have my solution or my answer to that I'll get to in a second. But keep that in mind as you go through this. There's no way that Andrew Nembhard just makes Pascal Siakam not as powerful and neutralizes him. There's no way Andrew Nembhard is making Pacers defense significantly worse, and there's no way he is making Pacers opponents shoot way better from two. So I think after going through all this all seems stupid. It just seems like terrible luck in terms of when he's on the floor. But how far into a season or how far into a sample do you get before you go, it can't be luck? Well, not this far. These are not that big of minutes numbers. They're not even close. Many people will tell you 500 minutes is like the low end of stable stats, and even that's probably low. And all these were like 100 to 80. However, here's why this is all maybe ridiculous to analyze. The Pacers trio of guys who have to start every game, no matter what, of Nembhard, Mathurin, Siakam, of their healthy guys, Neesmith obviously too, would be in that group. Those three guys have played in one lineup altogether with more than 50 minutes played. Ethan Thompson is in that lineup. What? Like what can the Pacers even take from that? Can they even say the numbers matter when the most played lineup with their top trio together has Ethan Thompson on the floor? The second highest minute lineup, which is almost at 50 minutes, has Isaiah Jackson and Ben Shepherd. What am I doing? What are the Pacers doing? Like, I'm not saying what are the Pacers doing like they're making bad choices. Like, what are they doing in terms of what data can they even make decisions based off of? When they say we're going to look at what's happening with the starters, it's hard to do that besides just saying it looks bad. And it does. The starting lineup has not looked particularly good recently, but it's impossible to dive into the numbers and actually walk out of it with any real conclusions to me, because there's a lot of low sample sizes. There's a lot of fluky shooting, sometimes in the Pacers' favor, sometimes in opponents' favors. And then you land on this. The quartet with Neesmith has played all of 7 minutes this season. That first half against OKC, they were -2 against the best team in the NBA. I think that is probably where the answer guides me to with these Nembhard insanely weird plus-minus numbers. It's kind of all nonsense. Everybody's been so hurt. The small sample size is crazy low. And eventually, with so many changes that like Ethan Thompson is playing with them and he has been on the team for 2 days and doesn't know the plays, or, a million players have gotten hardship contracts in those exact situations, all of this will level out is my official theory. And I know that sounds crazy when it's been over a fourth of the season now, but, Ben Mathurin's barely played half the season. He missed 11 games in a row. They played 28, right? That's almost half. Nembhard missed a bunch of time too. So these samples are all small and a not significant part of the Pacers season in general. The numbers are crazy weird. And I just kind of think the answer, unfortunately, is the boring answer. It's bad luck. However, that doesn't mean you don't need to look at things and make changes. I think Nembhard has gotten the most unlucky after looking into all this. His own efficiency isn't awesome, but let's talk about Andrew Nembhard's season specifically to close this out. Did you know this, listener? I wrote this after Pacers-Knicks. Andrew Nembhard, after his god-awful start from three. Remember the start he had shooting from deep? 0 for 2 in his first game, gets hurt. 2 for 10, 2 for 9, 3 for 6, 1 for 5. Through his first 8 games, Andrew Nembhard was shooting 31.8% from three, 14 for 44. And that includes a 4 for 5 game and a 3 for 6 game, which is very good. His first 5 of games, he was at 25% from three. Since those first 5 games, he's been pretty good from deep. And this includes 2 games recently that are bad. He's at 42% since then. Since his 8th game of the season, still a long sample, he's been at 40%. He's shooting the three pretty well, but his percentages are still goofy because his twos have been dreadful, right? So career high from three, still guarding the best guy every night, despite that being way too much of a load for him. That should not be happening, but it has to happen. They don't have another option. His assist numbers are pretty healthy, right? Career high assists per game. For some reason, I have messed up my tabs for Andrew Nembhard stats. Thank you, my own brain, for going too fast. Career high assists per game. His assist percentage way up, like doing better stuff for sure. Very obvious. 33% assist percentage is crazy. His twos have been terrible. This is where I would say Andrew Nembhard needs to clean something up in his game. His 2-point percentage is 46%. That is a career low by a lot. He's never been below 50 on twos, and despite his good 3-point shooting, his shot diet is not right to me. If you look at where he's taking his shots from, I'm talking way too long about Andrew Nembhard, I realize. His shots at the rim are a career low by multiple percentage points. He's taking more shots from 3 to 10 feet than last year and more long twos than last year. In fact, a career high percentage of long twos, a number that keeps creeping up in his career, and a normal number of mid-range shots. He has got to get to the rim more. And if he can, he's got to get off the ball. And that's fine. I think he would admit that he could clean that up. Too many long twos. That would be my nitpick for him. Easily. But I mostly think, yawn, boring answer, I know, his crazy fluky plus-minus numbers are just bad luck. And my final evidence for that would be his on-off with Siakams are bad, and that makes no sense because Pascal Siakam has insanely good on-off numbers. And what player on the Pacers do you think has played the highest percentage of their minutes with Pascal Siakam? It's Andrew Nembhard at 73.5%. Mathurin a very close second. So unless you think that your conclusion is Andrew Nembhard just makes Pascal Siakam completely terrible, I think this is all just nonsense. I think it's all just fluky nonsense. And that is my conclusion on this. And if the Pacers do change their starting lineup, I think they should put a young guy in there or Garrison Matthews because he can really, really shoot it. And that would be instead of Quentin Jackson. But I think Quentin Jackson starting makes sense. I said that after the Knicks game. I'm not backing down from that after just one bad game. But they were very low energy and very poor against the Pelicans. Okay, that was much longer than I thought it would be. Let's talk about James Wiseman. He is back with the Pacers. And then talk about some trade stuff that you need to know about this team. It's all coming up here on Locked On Pacers. Before we do any of that, we got to talk about the great people over at Robinhood. Nobody knows your money goals better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do, locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive you have into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. You can trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto, all right on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood Strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that is Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making this your first listen today. And every single day, your second listen could, of course, be Locked On Pelicans. Not only because they beat the Pacers by 19 in their most recent game, but also because the Pelicans are kind of on fire. They've won 4 games in a row. Better record in their last 4 games. The Pelicans over the Thunder. The Thunder have won 2 of their last 4. Crazy times in the NBA. And thank you for being an everydayer. If you listen every day, especially if you're listening today during a holiday week, thank you so much. The Everydayer Club is a new thing Locked On provides. Ad-free episodes, exclusive Discord access, and so much more. Check out the link in the description of this episode. Okay. Whew. I'm very rambly today. James Wiseman is back with the Pacers. Woo, that came out of nowhere. Saturday announcement from the Pacers down in New Orleans. They worked him out in the morning of the game to bring back James Wiseman, who they waived after just 2 games this season on a 10-day deal. So first, let me talk about the why. And I think the answer is super, super obvious, but I still want to explain it. They need a center right now. Every single time, except for one all season, that they've made a hardship signing or a transaction, it has been out of need. When they let go of James Wiseman, it's because they needed a guard. If you'll recall, at that time, Andrew Nembhard, Tyrese Haliburton, TJ McConnell, Taylor Peter, Ben Mathurin, Cam Jones were all hurt at the same time. Ben Shepherd was starting at point guard and playing a lot of guard, right? They were really banged up. So they waived James Wiseman and got Mac McClung. Now, the opposite is happening. They're healthier elsewhere, and they need a center because, if you didn't notice, right before halftime at Pacers-Knicks, Tony Bradley really hurt his thumb really bad. It's fractured. He had a splint on it in the Pacers-Pelicans game. He could have played in an emergency. He was active, but they didn't want that to be a thing. So for the first time this season, the way the Pacers injuries have kind of transferred around, they needed a center the most, right? They had only Huff and Jackson ahead of Wiseman, and one foul trouble situation or one injury from those two, and you really need a center. And Wiseman played. He had actual rotation minutes anyway. This by-committee approach led to that happening. Huff was not great in New Orleans, so Wiseman, they needed a center. So the first time that he was involved in an injury transaction, it hurt him. This time it obviously helps him. So it makes perfect sense. And I even said when they go back and listen to Wednesdays, Thursdays, I can't remember, podcast on this feed, when they signed Gabe McLaughlin originally, I said, this one's interesting to me because they have a hardship available for Haliburton, Toppin, Nesmith, and Shepard's injuries. So it makes sense that they would get a wing, but they didn't need Gabe McLaughlin to play, right? Think about their rotation. They already had Matthews and Furphy and Walker and Mathurin and Jackson available as the kind of 2-3 hybrids. And if you count the 4s, they didn't need Gabe McLaughlin in a way that they have every other time they've made a move. And I thought that's kind of interesting that they signed somebody when they didn't immediately need someone to play. Well, perfect timing. The very next game, they did need someone. They actually did need somebody. And so McLaughlin gets waived from his hardship 10-day, released to use the correct term, and then Wiseman gets signed. So the why is very obvious. And in this case, it benefits Wiseman. I think that makes sense. And also, funny is not the right word, but like a little bit of smirk to me that this is how the center injury thing goes for the Pacers. I mean, all offseason. I probably really overblew this, but I said, man, they have 2 centers coming off Achilles tears. They should probably keep 4. And they did keep 4, or they should probably consider keeping 4. I guess I did say they should keep a point guard over Tony Bradley. Then Bradley was kind of good and still has been kind of good. Regardless, this is their first center injury of the season, and it's not even to one of the guys who tore their Achilles last year. And actually, one of the guys who tore their Achilles last year is the injury replacement for the other guy who got hurt. This is their first center injury all year. That's just kind of funny and ironic, given how all this conversation went. So Wiseman specifically, after getting waived, went to California. He did some pickup runs where he could. You can't be in NBA game shape not playing in NBA games. Rick Carlisle even said that Wiseman was probably not in NBA game shape before Pacers Pelicans. But he is, if you need an emergency in a pinch guy, the perfect answer because he played for the team this year. He was in preseason and training camp. He was on the team last year despite not being able to play. So he knows the people. He knows the system better than basically anybody you could sign in a pinch. So if he's even kind of ready to play, then great. That is probably the guy you should be pursuing. And of course, as you saw in Pacers Pelicans, was somewhat effective, right? He had that steal into transition dunk. I thought his defense specifically in the post was better than it's been at times this season. 6 points and 3 boards for him. His minutes went very well for the team. I think the bigger influence on that was dominant play from TJ McConnell, but that's the first time I think he's played with a point guard all season, right? That game he played in Memphis where he started, they did not have any point guards. So, I thought his minutes went okay. He played 15 minutes. So good for him. And he was of the candidates available, probably the guy who knows their stuff the best. That's helpful. That institutional knowledge is helpful. So the fact that they had an injury at center finally, and so their hardship contract could go to better use, and a guy who was on the team already this season that they clearly like, by the way, right? I think Wiseman's become pretty polarizing amongst fans. Clearly the Pacers, who have now signed him 3 times to contracts, do like him, right? They brought him back, and there we go. He's on the floor and playing. So let me talk about something mechanically that's very interesting here. Hardship contracts are very hard to find the rules of. They're not in the CBA. They're in a different rules document. So the way this actually functionally works, I did not know this. So James Wiseman, the press release calls it a 10-day contract. He doesn't really get a 10-day from the day he was signed, which is December 20th. Instead, because you apply for a hardship and you're granted it, he just slides into the hardship slot that was occupied by Gabe McLaughlin, that's when the clock started. He was signed on Tuesday on the 16th of December. And so the way 10 days work too, McLaughlin gets his full 10-day amount, and James Wiseman will get from his cap hit the full 10-day amount, but they only get James Wiseman for the remaining time that Gabe McLaughlin would have been on his 10-day. So Wiseman's deal actually expires on Christmas. Christmas is his last day under contract with the Pacers, so he'll be available and active in Boston, and then at home when they play, I can't remember who they play right before Christmas. I should know that. It's my job to know that. But regardless, he only has 2 more games right now, the Bucks stuff, where he can be active with the team. I thought that was super interesting. And so once again, the Pacers keep having to spend money to have the right roster that actually makes sense and can feel the rotation. That's been the story of their season to me, beyond the injuries themselves. I guess that counts as the injuries themselves. But I thought that was mechanically very interesting because I was unaware of how those hardship swap rules even worked, because I've never covered one before and I had to check around on it. But good for Wiseman, right? They clearly like him. He did well enough in his chance. Number 1, we'll see if he plays in these next 2 games. If Bradley's healthier, would they just turn to him instead? Who knows? Contract guarantee deadline is in 2 weeks. I'll talk about that either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, which is noteworthy for Bradley and, of course, Garrison Matthews. So still eval time right now for the Pacers with a lot of these guys. But James Wiseman is back. Makes perfect sense to me. We'll see if he keeps playing. We'll see what Bradley's health status is. But right now, he's the 3rd center, and he produced in his first game. Last thing today, more trade notes that you need to know that I think some people don't realize, some people should realize, that will be relevant for the Pacers as trade season approaches. It's all coming up here to close out today's Locked On Pacers. Before we talk about any of that, though, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel NFL Sundays. Like today, me talking, and yesterday for you listening. Move fast. One big play, suddenly everything feels way different. That is what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is the best when the games start to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the moment flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into that moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. Place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel. Game moves fast, and so can you. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making this your first listen today and every single day your second listen. The Clippers beat the Lakers somehow. Locked On Clippers to hear more about that happening. The Clippers maybe need to start winning games, or the NBA is going to be very scared of the OKC Thunder getting a very high draft pick, which I'm sure you've heard about many a time. Pacers Celtics tonight. Locked On Celtics could be your second listen. Love John Corrales. The Celtics gap year looks a little different than the Pacers gap year. Their health has been much better outside of obviously the Jason Tatum part of this. Okay. I need to talk about a few more trade things that I keep seeing that can't happen, or that you just need to know generally as a fan of the Pacers. Thing 1, these are all rules that internally impact the Pacers options. People keep saying everybody's talking about Mathurin, and I talked about Mathurin for contract reasons. But why is anybody talking about Nembhard or Nesmith? He could slot into their role and things like that. Well, I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't talk about, but I'll tell you this. Aaron Nesmith can't be traded this season at all. He signed an extension in October, and his extension is going to be 140% of the estimated average player salary at the time it actually happens. And if your extension is more than 120% of your previous salary, you can't be traded for 6 months. So because he's getting a raise that is a 40% raise and more than a 20% raise, Aaron Nesmith can't be traded for 6 months after October. Guess what? That's mid-March. That's after the trade deadline. That's the same kind of deal that happened with Malcolm Brogdon, if you'll recall, in the season where the Pacers actually tore things down. So Aaron Nesmith can't be traded this season at all. Get him out of your fake trades. Get him out of your brain. He is going to be on the team heading into next offseason. He's going to be on the team for the rest of this season. That's just how the rules work. That will not be able to happen. Speaking of can't be traded this year, players who sign after, I can't do math very quickly, September 15th are interesting because if you sign with a team in the offseason and you're not a full bird or early bird free agent, which we'll get to in a second, you can be traded on December 15th. However, you can't be traded until 3 months after you sign a contract. So if you sign after September 15th and you are not a full bird or early bird free agent, you can't be traded for 3 months. Well, guess what? That would have mattered for like DeLon Wright, who signed in early October, or Campaign. And that does matter for one Garrison Matthews, who signed his contract with the Pacers in this month of December. We'll see if he's even on the team in 3 weeks. But Garrison Matthews also cannot be traded this season for any reason at all. The 3-month trade restriction for him carries beyond the trade deadline. Add him into the Nesmith pile of untradeable legally this season. Not that that's going to like actually swing anything of or anything like that, but keep his salaries out of your trades, keep his minimum ideas and funkery out of your trades. Thing 3 to note, I've talked about this one a little bit. I mentioned the rules earlier on this one. So December 15th, which was as of this coming out 1 week ago, is a big time on the calendar because players signed in the offseason who signed with a new team or players who did not sign using full or early bird rights can be traded on December 15th. However, if you signed with full or early bird and you got a certain raise, I'm not going to get too nuanced on this, you can't be traded until January 15th. And that does apply to one Isaiah Jackson, who the Pacers used full bird rights to re-sign to his 3-year, $21 million deal. And so a player that I think is actually interesting to monitor with the trade deadline approaching, Isaiah Jackson cannot be traded until January 15th. That's another trade restriction. So keep him out of your trade machine until whatever that would be, 4 weeks from now, about 4 weeks from now. And the last player with a trade restriction, I can't even believe I put this in my notes. If you sign a 2-way contract with a team, you cannot be traded for 30 days. So I know all of you cannot stop talking about Ethan Thompson trades. However, he cannot be traded until December 30th. So that currently means right this second this episode comes out, 4 Pacers players legally cannot be traded. Aaron Nesmith, Isaiah Jackson, Garrison Matthews, and Ethan Thompson in about 8 days. Okay, Ethan Thompson can be in trades in about a month. Okay, Isaiah Jackson can be traded. Nesmith and Garrison Matthews never this season will be able to. Keep that in mind as trade season continues. Walker Kessler, by the way, I floated that thing when I did my ideas or stuff that people keep talking, not my idea, stuff people keep talking about with Trades podcast. It was earlier this week. That has now been officially reported by Mark Stein. So add him to your good sourced connected player list. I think the price for him would be very high because he's very good. But regardless, that is the end of today's trade notes segment. This week will be interesting. So they have a back-to-back. Celtics tonight. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Bucks the next day. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. Then 2 days off for holidays. I will, of course, do podcasts on Christmas Eve and Christmas. What will I talk about? We'll see. This is usually a time of year I like to look at 2- and 3-man lineup data and things like that. It's going to be really hard with all the injuries the Pacers have faced, but we'll dive into that and I'll find other things to talk about. If you have ideas, let me know. I got some interesting ones last time I put out those feelers, and then they're right back into games. Probably, like I said, no guests this week because everybody's enjoying the holidays. I'm not going to make them talk to me about the Pacers. Thank you all so much for listening today. You can find me on social media at Tony R. East and this podcast at Locked On Pacers. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you very soon.